Hi, Thomas the Hermit here, and we're going to talk about the dark nights, the spiritual dark nights. Now, there are times in our lives where we feel like everything is falling apart, nothing is working out, nothing is adding up. No matter what we do, things don't seem to get better. There are times in our lives when businesses fail. There are times when we get fired from jobs. There are times when we are pressed against the wall. Maybe we're forced to be homeless, or someone very special to us dies, or we feel like we're left alone in the world, that we are isolated, that no one cares. These could be spiritual dark nights. Now, are they the dark night of the soul? Probably not. But the dark nights are not just the dark night of the soul, which is a complete abandonment by God. And I think that that could be best described as when the apostles, they had Jesus, they thought he was going to be king of Israel, and there was going to be this revolution, and everything was going to be really great, and they were going to be, part of his court. And then the Romans got a hold of him and they crucified him, and the Jesus, the promise, was dead. And so they slipped into a dark night of the soul. They were deprived of God. But the more common dark night of the senses is something that we all experience, maybe sometimes in small pieces and maybe in very large pieces. I myself have probably lived in the dark night of the senses for probably about 30 years. And I would associate that with, I started off with this great relationship with God. We were going along, I was praying for things, he was giving them to me. I was ministering to others, I was on top of the world. And then it's like somebody turned the lights off. Something happened, and it wasn't that I had changed my relationship with Jesus. He changed his game plan. What is his game plan? What is the dark night? Well, after experiencing 30 years of it, I can kind of share a little bit about what that is. And I can also share with you from the text of St. John of the Cross. Now, the dark nights, are times of purifying us or causing us to be detached from the world. Now, we say the world, we have an image that comes up, like we have an image of, the flesh and the world and the lures of the world. Well, that is part of what we get purified from. But believe it or not, we even get purified from attachment to pleasures and attachments to joys, and joys about the world, not joy in God. We get purified from attachment to people. We get purified from attachment to our own ways of thinking and how we perceive the world, because we don't understand what's going on. And that's one of the marks of the fact that you're in a dark night, is you don't understand what's going on. Life wasn't supposed to be this way. Why am I going through this? You seem to be able to live, but you don't know how, because it doesn't seem like you're being blessed, And at times it may even feel like God is against you. It might feel like that, But God is ever present still, in a very mysterious way, in a dark way. This is why they're called dark nights. They're not called dark nights because they're evil. You know, we use the term light and dark, we think light is good, dark is evil. Well, the term dark night that John uses is really a description of a night, like it grows evening and then it becomes nighttime. And when it becomes nighttime, it becomes dark. But he's saying on that dark night, you know, you couldn't see the stars or the moon. You know, it's one of these really dark nights. And that's how he describes a spiritual dark night. And you say, well, hold on, Thomas, what do you mean, you know, isn't John the one who came up with the phrase dark night of the soul? Yes. This is what we remember John for, creating the term dark night of the soul. And it came off a poem that he wrote called The Dark Night of the Soul, A Noche Oscura. Now, this he later elaborated and pointed out the other dark night called the dark night of the senses, which he said is more common than the dark night of the soul. Who passes through to the dark night of the soul? Well, the people who make it through the dark night of the soul would be, you know, your big shots, you know, Mother Teresa, Teresa of Avila, St. Francis of Assisi. All of them went through the dark night of the soul. And that, therefore, they elevated to what we call spiritual marriage, or the union of their will with God's will. Now, we're not ready to be in union with God's will. We're too attached to things. We're attached to our thoughts, we're attached to our minds, we're attached to how we feel, we're attached to how people treat us, we're attached to honor, we're attached to vices, you know, or maybe we're attached to something, you know, dangerous, drugs or alcohol or sex. You know, we have all these attachments. Well, the dark night of the senses is to help set us free from those. But it ain't fun. I'm not going to get into a complete understanding of the dark night. Suffice to say that dark nights come into our lives. How should we respond to them? I'm just going to say that faith and perseverance are key. And sometimes it's nice to know that you're going through something, but God is the author of it, and He can bring you to the other side of it. And that it is making you more of whom God has called you to be. It is purifying you. It is sifting you. It is sifting out those things that we are attached to. Because we're only supposed to be attached to God alone. Now, the other reason that this is called a dark night, and John goes into this extensively, I'm pretty much teaching you what John put in his writings, principally in the writing The Ascent of Mount Carmel. That's a particular book that you can read, The Ascent of Mount Carmel. Now, in The Ascent of Mount Carmel, he talks about the fact that the dark night is darkness because we can only walk by faith. You say, hold on, I thought I already had faith. Well, I have found out that faith is strengthened when we are going through difficulties and trials. You know, we're going along, everything's good, everything's working out, God is blessing you, you know, you have what you need, your money, everything like that. You know, it doesn't take too much faith to get through that. It don't take very much. But now when you get that stuff taken away from you, are you going to continue to honor and love God? Well, it's going to be hard. And you might fail a little bit, but I suggest you keep getting back up and you keep trying no matter how long it lasts. I've been through 30 years of it, you know. The whole time I kind of knew that's what was going on. I knew God was there. I knew He was still there somewhere, you know. And at some point about 4 or 5 years ago, the lights came back on and I entered what is called the illuminative state. That is the state that is before the dark night of the soul. So no, I am far from being perfected. But I am in the illuminative state, and I like being here. Will God move me on? I have no idea. I'm thinking he probably will, and that's going to be an even worse thing, worse trials than I've already been through. This is Thomas the Hermit talking about God's will, the dark nights, the spiritual dark nights. Say a prayer for me. I am praying for you. I'll talk to you later.